Good morning, colleagues across Southeast Asia. Good evening, colleagues in the US mainland, and good afternoon to folks here in Hawaii. My name is Miriam Stark, and I'm currently the director of the Center for Southeast Asian Studies here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And today's webinar highlights career opportunities in international education with a session entitled International Education Careers, Nothing Adventured, Nothing Gained. This webinar is the next installment in our CAPA, Careers in Asia-Pacific Affairs series. The Careers in Asia-Pacific Affairs is an initiative under our School of Pacific and Asian Studies that's designed to prepare students for dynamic careers across Asian studies. The CAPA initiative is funded through Title VI funding through the U.S. Department of Education and co-sponsored by our 3 National Resource Centers here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa and the Center for Indo-Pacific Affairs, the Department of Asian Studies. Our cross-center multi-year CAPA initiative has 3 goals. The first is to expand students' awareness of the diverse and dynamic careers they can pursue across interdisciplinary and specialist fields in Asian and Pacific affairs. The second is to equip students with knowledge and skills required in Asia-Pacific-related careers across government, academia, business, and nonprofit sectors. And finally, to support the development of workplace competencies required in job markets across different industries and geographies. Today, we are very fortunate to have UH Mānoa Alumni who will discuss their international education careers, and our Associate Center Director and UH Mānoa alumna herself, Dr. Terry Skillman-Kashyap, will be the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miriam. I appreciate the introduction, and aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. Let me give a short information about each of the speakers who will be with us today. We have Dawn Lovett, who is a performing arts educator who has spent over 20 years teaching in international schools. She has worked in 8 countries in Southeast Asia, Central and South America, Europe, and North Africa. She has taught all grade levels from preschool through secondary and written curricula for American, British, and international baccalaureate frameworks. Dawn holds a degree in ethnomusicology and music education from UH Mānoa, and she just returned to the USA this summer. Greg Stock graduated from the Asian Studies program at UH Mānoa with an MA focusing on conflict regions in Southeast Asia. Greg is now a high school teacher at Green School in Bali, Indonesia. His current research centers around students whom he has had the honor or has the honor of working with every day, and how to most effectively bring them engaging and relevant content, activities, skills, and capabilities, and questions in the social sciences and the humanities. Dr. Mayco Santaella is a professor and acting dean for the School of Arts at Sunway University in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He studied at the University of Hawaii and is an East-West Center Fellow researching music and dance traditions of the extended Sulu Zone, or East Malaysia, Southern Philippines, and Eastern Indonesia, and its links to the Nusantara region. His research foci include study of music and dance traditions, as well as popular music in Southeast Asia. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll start with 5 different questions, and we'll do a round robin for responses. We'll continue this format for each question. Participants, please use the Q&A option to ask your question, and you might want to develop your question and ask it toward the end of the panelists' discussion. So please remember, use the Q&A option. So let's see. First, Dawn, since you came back to the US this summer, can I get you to answer the first, start up with the first question? What inspired you to look for employment outside of the USA?
When I was in my undergraduate education, actually, I did a May seminar abroad. We were studying the life of Mozart, and we toured all around Europe following his footsteps. And one of the stops we made in Vienna, there was an alumni of my college, Concordia College, and he was the music teacher there. And I thought, I was already training to be a music teacher, and well, gosh, being a music teacher in Vienna sounds a whole lot nicer than being a music teacher in rural Minnesota when I'm done with college. So we stayed in touch, and after I graduated, I asked him how the process was to get involved. He gave me some pointers. He advised me it wasn't super likely that as a first-year teacher I would get to go overseas. But I did find a job overseas, and I was super excited to head straight to Mexico after I graduated college. So I began and then have just returned after teaching abroad for many, many years.
Awesome. That's really wonderful. Greg, what inspired you to look for employment outside of the USA?
Well, I had taught outside of the U.S. once before. Fresh out of my undergrad studies, I was a teacher in Jamaica in the West Indies,
Hmm.
and I also studied abroad in Vienna as an undergrad. German was one of my majors. So from a young age, I got the travel bug, and I saw there was a lot to be learned by living in other cultures and countries. And as a school teacher, my wife's also a school teacher, it affords a lot of travel time. And so with our travels, we really fell in love with Indonesia and Bali and gamelan music. So that led me to UH Manoa, my studies. And then I had been at the same school for about 16 years in Honolulu and certainly loved Honolulu, but it was just time to maybe try something new. And we knew we loved Bali, and it's worked out well. We enjoy living and teaching in Bali.
Wonderful. Michael, what about you? What took you to teaching overseas?
Uh, Aloha, Terry, and everyone. Yeah, good to be here today. So yeah, it's a bit of a long journey and a long story, but to keep it short, basically, well, I had when I was in Hawaii, there were quite a lot of students and colleagues from Indonesia at that time with under the Ford Foundation grants, and there were a lot of uh, students doing postgraduate studies from different parts of Indonesia, especially outside Java. So I made a good friend who Don knows, and yeah, so I followed him back to Sulawesi a couple of times. So ended up doing my studies focusing on this region. So after finishing in Hawaii, I received a Fulbright. So I went to Sulawesi and spent 2 years there. And yeah, because I wanted to stay in the region, I explored possibilities, and I came to Malaysia, which is close to Indonesia, where I do a lot of my work, but also close to Thailand, where my wife is from. So this seemed to like be a good middle ground between the two. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, our second question. How did your UH degree and your second language skills? I know Greg and Don, you've had FLAS awards, and Michael, you studied Bahasa here. How did it help prepare you for your career overseas? Let's start with Greg. Why don't you start us off this time?
Okay. Well, I would say it was instrumental. I know in talking to our uh, high school leader and campus head at Green School, they said that the fact that you spoke Indonesian was a great selling point. And of course, I had a lot of teaching experience by the time I applied, but it's been great coming into a community. A lot of my colleagues and students here are Balinese and or Indonesian, and it's a great way to keep building on my language skills too. And uh, admittedly, it was a challenge. I was over 50 when I started to learn Indonesian, but I'm so grateful for what the opportunities UH gave me. I did a summer intensive. My wife and I did that at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, thanks to funding from UH Manoa and from the class fellowship. Also did a summer in Yogyakarta and had 2 academic class experiences. So just extremely thankful for those opportunities. And it definitely gave me a language foundation that I've really been able to build up here in the last 6 or 7 years since I've been in Indonesia.
Wonderful, thank you. So you had the CSES Bahasa FLAS grant?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Michael, you want to take a turn?
Okay. Well, it's actually, I guess, quite a similar story to that of Greg's. I also received a FLAS fellowship to study Indonesian. I did 3 years of Indonesian studies at UH, and I also was fortunate to get the grant to go to Wisconsin for the CASI summer program. So, which was it was also a good experience. A lot of people ask me, why are you going to the Midwest to study Indonesian? But it was certainly it was certainly a cultural experience also to be there. And then but then because we also had a lot of FLTAs that were supported by Fulbright that came to UH to teach on a yearly basis. Then we also got to interact with a lot of Indonesian teachers at that time. And whenever I went back to Indonesia, then I would also go visit them and sort of go around their hometown when I was doing my undergraduate studies at the time. So it has also been very useful. I mean, not only for my research, but now for work. I did not expect to use it, but even though we deliver all our classes in English here at the university in Malaysia, we're dealing with a lot of documents from the Ministry of Education, and everything is in Malay. So at least I have that advantage. I have to adjust, of course, a little bit from Indonesian to Malay. But but that's also another, there's a whole array of opportunities, I think, of things to do in Malaysia as well. If you have some, at least a good level of Indonesian, you can get around things here. Yeah.
Wow, wonderful, thanks. Dawn, tell us about your FLAS grant from a totally different area of the world.
When I arrived at UH to study ethnomusicology, I actually didn't know what my area of focus was going to be. I thought maybe I was going to do taiko drumming because I had done a bit of that previously, but there were too many people already studying Japanese music. So my advisors asked if I spoke other languages, and I already spoke Spanish and German and French. So she said, oh, if you speak French, we really need people in the Pacific. So I started studying the music of French Polynesia and used my French kind of as a more solid foundation to get around when I was doing my fieldwork in French Polynesia. But I took Tahitian language at UH and got the FLAS Foreign Language Area Studies Fellowship for the Tahitian language. So it was really fun to be able to speak some Tahitian when I was doing my field work, and also then doing the ensembles and singing in Samoan and Maori and Hawaiian and Tahitian. So picking up a little bit of various Polynesian languages in addition to the Tahitian. Since then, I went to Vietnam right after Hawaii, so the Tahitian language didn't help me out a whole lot. But I always have students from all over the world in my classes. I have colleagues from all over the world, and it's nice to have that as a connection, to be able to speak at least a few words, a few sentences with students. I had a Samoan student at my last school in Romania, and he would come in every day and we would greet each other in Samoan. And it was such a nice way to be able to connect with a student far away from either of our homes. So the language is a really important part of establishing those bonds as a teacher.
Awesome. How many years did you take Tahitian?
I took it for 3 years while I was there.
Okay. Well, all of you have gone beyond the 2-year FLAS study, which is awesome. Thank you. So for now, the third question, what was your process of looking for a job? Sorry, what steps are involved in finding an opportunity? Did you, for example, use an agency or did you apply directly to an institution? Let's see, who did I start with last time first? I can remember. Mayco, why don't you start us out this time?
Okay. Well, I think again, drawing on the UH connection, both uh, at the ethnomusicology program, but also the East West Center. Um, uh, I think it's really, I mean, it's great that we have a lot of friends all around the Asia Pacific region. But that also really opened up a lot of opportunities for different projects and then eventually work as well. So when I was in Indonesia doing my Fulbright, we actually organized a number of different side projects together with groups. So, for example, organizing a tour for an ensemble from Sulawesi to go to perform in Thailand as well as to the Philippines. And then immediately you draw on connections that you have from Hawaii, from UH and the East West Center. And so we were able to realize that. And yeah, along with those activities, then there was a colleague, also a colleague of Dawn's, Claire, who mentioned about the possibility of teaching in Malaysia. And yeah, so I pursued it, applied, and then got the position at UPSI at that time. And then after that, I changed to Sunway University, where I am at the moment. So I think, of course, there are maybe every region will work differently, but here you will, in Southeast Asia, you will find job posts in different places. But it's also good, I think, for prospective applicants to actually contact the universities directly and then just share your CVs with the dean or the head of the schools and just let them know that you are exploring options in the region. And then yeah, some in if there are possibilities, then they will let you know. If not, you can keep looking. But I think Southeast Asia is very dynamic in that sense. So there's a lot of always ways of trying to realize positions and possibilities. So yeah, that'll be my advice.
Very good. Thank you. Greg, how did you come up with the option for green school in Bali?
Well, again, I had been at the Waldorf School in Honolulu for about 16 years, and it was a great job, and it was very good to me. But one of my reasons for going back to UH, along with learning Indonesian language and learning more about Southeast Asia, was just to open doors to other opportunities. And so I just was at a place in my own biography and in my own job where it was felt ripe. I needed to look elsewhere, and Bali was a natural place to look. And I knew about Green School. My wife and I were actually in Bali in 2008. I was on a sabbatical, and we saw the school being built. And I actually talked with them at that time. And our mutual interest wasn't that strong at that time, but as a teacher, I've had a strong interest in sustainability and environmental initiatives. Did a lot of community-based learning with students on Oahu. So I did see they had a job available, and I did not go through an agency. I think I would mention to potential future teachers out there, that's not a bad way to go. So I wouldn't be against using an agency. I realize it costs some money, but they can be a big help. And I know a lot of my teaching colleagues have used agencies. And what I have noticed is that if you're interested in teaching internationally, if you do it a few years at one school, it can open doors all over the world. International schools really love that experience. And whether you go through an agency or not, I think you find there are many opportunities out there. There's a lot of interest from schools. But to get back to how specifically I found Green School, I just applied online. They had a very extensive application process, but I took my time and filled it all out. And it so happened that as we were dialoguing, I got another grant from the University of Hawaii to go to Lombok for the Asia Pacific Mediation Forum. I was involved with the Sparks Matsunaga Institute while I was at UH, did a certification with them. So I accompanied Professor Bruce Barnes to Lombok and told Green School that, hey, I would be in Indonesia and I could pop over to the school and see them personally. And, I think they were pleased that I was coming to Indonesia and again, that I spoke Indonesian. But it certainly makes a difference to see people face to face. And we developed a relationship. And yeah, I guess I was just at a place in my own teaching biography where it was a good fit for all parties.
Well, that's inspiring. Thanks. Dawn, you've been teaching overseas in multiple places for 24 years. So tell us how you got started and what, I guess, kept you going.
When I first got started, again, the prospect seemed not great for a brand new teacher. So I was just saving money and not going to the recruiting fairs, but emailing schools directly. This was so long ago that I actually got an email back from a school that said, hey, we have a layover in your airport. Can you just meet us at the gate and we'll interview you there? So I met them at the gate in Minneapolis Airport and had my job interview as they were on a way to a recruiting fair. So that's how I got my first job. We had a good interview and he offered me the job before he got to the job fair and interviewed everybody else. So I was really excited. My next school, my roommate happened to be moving somewhere and the school called to interview her and I answered the phone and they asked if I was also looking for a job. So we ended up moving together to Mexico City. And then I did go to a job fair after that because I was still a relatively new teacher and I was trying to move out of Central America at that point, and wanted a few more options. So I went to a job fair, which is a really interesting experience. Usually is taking place in a hotel. All of the directors have tables set up and you go stand in line and hand your resume to them and you get interviews. And you have a lot of interviews and a lot of interest sessions. And, in 3 days' time, you hope that you have walked away with a new job. So it's a really intense kind of experience, but it worked well for me as a new teacher to do that a few times. And then, as Greg said, at that point, then I had a bit more of a network. After UH, I knew people as well in different fields. So starting to network with lots of other people, opening doors and contacting schools that I knew people at. So I haven't done a job fair for quite a while. I've been able to just go through contacts or just applying to schools directly.
Wow, that's really good. What agency did you first go through?
I have done both International School Services, ISS, and Search Associates at different points.
I think we have that information. We'll put it in the chat so people can grab that. Thank you. Okay, maybe talk about the nitty-gritty of what documents did you need that you need to provide with your application, like your CV, statements of teaching philosophy. Did they want website or video clips or also recommendations and how many would applicants need to prepare? Michael, you want to start us off?
Okay, yeah, I guess I'll speak for Malaysia, but also Indonesia and Southeast Asia at large. There's usually quite a bit of documents to put together, but don't let that put you down. I think that also I've noticed that in many cases there's such a long list of documents and if let's say you're missing one document, they will actually still consider your application. So I would say if you are trying to meet a deadline, I will still give it a go. Of course, they will ask for CVs. If you have examples, if you're trying to get a position at a university, they will ask for some publication samples that you have done in the past, a research experience doing research projects. Um, I think in the US, it tends to be more focused on essays on let's say talking about yourself, talking about diversity and inclusion and equity and all of these things. But in Southeast Asia, it's I think more focusing on your accolades and your experience. So yeah, having said that, I would strongly suggest that you keep a PDF file or scan all the documents you may have, such as transcripts, your certificates of graduation of every degree you've done in the past, and any evidence that you may have of, let's say, big performances or big accomplishments, so that you can include in the package. Nowadays, you can just create a huge PDF and have it ready to go for whenever you are planning to apply for different posts. But yeah, and then in some cases, in Indonesia, for example, in some cases you have to submit that this was in the past where you had to submit actual photographs and of different sizes and different backgrounds, sometimes with a red color background, blue color background. I see Greg nodding there. Yeah, so but I think things have developed a bit since. So I think it's a little bit easier, but yeah, they will still require quite a bit of documents in that sense. But it's all in relation to achievements and certificates and things that you have done in the past. So this is what carries weight.
Okay, thank you. I think universities, the added resume and your publications are a little bit different than for the K-12 positions. Greg, how about you? What did you have to do for green school?
Well, I think Mayco already covered a lot of it. So some of that is standard, and I won't repeat that. You know, just have your CV organized, have your some of your resources done. Green School had a very personalized application process, and it is extensive. I want to say it took me 5 or 10 hours to wade through it and fill everything out and give them information. I think one of the more challenging things they asked for was just a 15-minute video talking about an initiative you've been involved with. So with many schools, they might have a mission or an angle, and Green School, it's certainly environmental sustainability. So they wanted me to talk about that. It's calling up a memory. I'd like to thank Paul Rausch, who used to work with the Southeast Asian Department. He and his wife helped film me for that. And his wife, Nezia, is a fine filmmaker. And I guess what I talked about was a garden that my wife's a kindergarten teacher, was at the Waldorf School. And we started a garden together. Here's a little, maybe a good story for Honolulu. We had to build compost, and we found out we could get free compost from the Honolulu Zoo, elephant and giraffe poo. We called it zoo poo at my school, and we mixed that with seaweed, and it built this magic pile that grew some great gardens. I was just back in Honolulu in April. Those gardens are still thriving at the Waldorf School. So yeah, what my school wanted was, tell us one thing that you've done that, you know, maybe you're proud of or that fits our mission. How could you contribute here? And yeah, other than that, I think what they were asking for was pretty standard, and Michael has mentioned it already.
Dawn, what about you? What have you experienced with the application process and the documents you need to provide?
A lot of what's already been mentioned. I had a website for performing arts. It was nice to have recordings of student performances. I had samples of lesson plans and curricula that I had written so they could see the kinds of things that I was teaching. If the schools are implementing a lot of multicultural curriculum or DEIJ initiatives, things like that. Trying to show that I had diversity in the kinds of things that I was teaching in the classroom. I've taken it down now as I try to revamp it for different jobs, but it was really helpful to have that, to be able to point to it. It shows a different organization of the work that I had done, instead of just being on like LinkedIn or the social media platforms, being able to really showcase lots of different styles of student work and student performances and things that I had written. Thinking of documentation beyond the application process, just the time that it takes to get all of your documents certified and notarized and authenticated, apostilled, takes a lot of time as well. So making sure that you leave time for that bureaucracy as you're getting ready for the moves once you get a job is really important.
Wow, very good. Did any of you in your application process hit a lot of restrictions from the specific country that you were going to? For me, I had difficulty with meeting the list to provide information when I went to Abu Dhabi. I had to go down and get a police clearance, and then all of the documents had to go to Washington, D.C. to the Secretary of State's office, I think, to be stamped.
Yes.
Did you experience that also?
Yes, that's the apostille. So once you get it notarized, then it's a higher level of certification. And I had that the first time was when I moved to Vietnam, was the first time I had heard of an apostille, that they needed that next level of certification. So it was quite time consuming and confusing process the first time around.
Yeah, and it was expensive because you had to send the self-addressed stamped envelope with it to go on to the school that they had to send it to. And yeah, for me in Abu Dhabi, there's not street addresses, which is really interesting. So that was a whole nother system to have to grapple with, having not been there yet. Okay, let's go to question number 5. What were the challenges or what are the challenges and rewards of your job in international education? And are there opportunities that have allowed you to advance your career more from where you are right now? Michael, you want to take us first?
Okay. I'd say, challenges are probably the same that you would have in any job. Any job may come with certain challenges, but I guess living overseas, I think you have to remember, living and working overseas, you have to remember that um, um, even though you may have spent a long time living there, that you still maybe come from a different place, and then so you have to be mindful of relationships and different ways of doing and different ways of being in that sense. Having said that, I think it is incredibly rewarding. I mean, it just opens up a lot of opportunities for you to not only grow in the region, but also travel. Southeast Asia is incredibly well connected nowadays, so it's very easy to go to a different country, even if it is, let's say, for a long weekend. And also in terms of options, I think the opportunities for growth professionally, the region is developing incredibly fast, Southeast Asia. So there's a lot of new schools, new universities, new institutions flourishing everywhere. So there's a lot of opportunities, not only for work, but also for mobility. So you can always come and then try it out and then see how the school works, how the region works, and then see where you can take it from there. Because yeah, there's just a lot of new schools being developed at the moment, especially international schools here in Malaysia, in Thailand, and Indonesia. A lot of course, we have people from outside the region that come to the region and are living here and choose to send the kids to international schools. But we also have a large number of our local people from in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines that choose to send their kids to international schools as well. And I think especially so after the pandemic, I've noticed that um, maybe given the uh, post-normal condition of the world we live nowadays in, I guess people are choosing to stay in the country at the moment. This is at least what I'm noticing. So parents prefer that the kids stay in Malaysia and that they do their studies here. And that means that rather than going overseas, they will just find an institution to study here, either for high school or for college later on. So that only adds to the increasing development in the region. So yeah, a lot of opportunities to not only come and work here, but also to grow and to explore different places. Yeah.
Greg, what about in Bali?
Challenges and opportunities. Well, I think the opportunity to live in Bali, to live in Indonesia, as Mayco said, Southeast Asia for me is such a dynamic place. It's such a mix of beautiful cultures, great food. So I think one big opportunity at my school, we have students from and families from over 40 different countries, and yet we have a really strong local presence. And I appreciate that. So there's the diversity in the classroom and diversity of perspectives and experience, and yet there's a strong foundation of Bali and Indonesia here. I certainly love the opportunity away from work just to deepen my own relationship with the people of Bali, the culture here. I mentioned earlier, my wife's a gamelan musician, so that opens up a lot of doors for us away from work. So those are great opportunities. Challenges, let's see. I think, frankly, I haven't found it too challenging. And some of the people might ask about, medical. I haven't needed a lot of medical, but when I have, it's been incredible and really great. And we have excellent health insurance at our school. So I think that's often one that people coming from the United States are concerned about. Will I get the medical attention I need if something comes up? I think one other challenge I wrote down is just, compared to maybe the University of Hawaii or public school teaching, there is not union representation. I question at times the rights of teachers. And, while I've had good experience personally at my school, I do know that watching other schools, that's something to be aware of, that as a teacher, but I think that's even something you sacrifice a little bit if you choose non-government education, the independent schools. So something to be aware of, but perhaps sometimes a little more freedom too. I do appreciate at my school regarding opportunity, they really allow the teachers to be creative and to craft the lessons based on the students in front of them. And, I appreciate that freedom and love my job. I would say definitely the opportunities outweigh the challenges.
Awesome. Dawn, what about you?
Yeah, adding to the challenges, definitely a good point that Greg mentioned about no union representation. I've had a wide gamut of really positive experiences in schools, but there have been some administrators that really tried to take advantage of the fact that they can kind of do whatever they want in an international school, and they get moved around and teachers get moved around so often that there isn't always a good track record to be able to follow up and see what the history of everybody is. So trying to do the homework when you're looking at jobs, there are sites available. Always take them with a grain of salt when you're looking at reviews of schools, but talking to people and looking at reviews of places to try and see if it is a good administration and someone that you want to work for, asking good questions when you're in the interview to make sure that it's a good fit for you, not just that you want to get a job. Challenges also can be having the materials that you need as a teacher, and how do you source those? What is available locally? Can you order stuff internationally? And what materials are there already in the classroom? I've become a great digital pack rat so that I have lots of things that come with me as I travel. Much easier now to have it all on a hard drive than the books that I used to carry around everywhere I went. And there's always a bit of a culture shock if you're moving somewhere where you're not super familiar with it, trying to get there and be a great teacher of your students on day one when you're still just settling into the country yourself and trying to figure out, like, where do I buy my groceries? But that also is part of what I have really enjoyed. So every time I move to a new place, I enjoy learning a new city map. I enjoy learning all of the different logistics of getting around in that area. And I think that is one of the biggest advantages. That's why I did it for so long, is that everywhere I went, I applied a lot of, we talked about field work in our ethnomusicology degrees and how do you be a good field worker. And I use those skills all the time in my daily life as I'm talking to teachers at my school that come from all over the world, as I'm talking to students from all over the world. And really knowing that everybody has their own background that they bring, and being able to use that in a lesson, being able to have this culturally responsive teaching style that, if a student all of a sudden says, oh, I have my kayagum here. Oh, fantastic. How can you play that in a rock band? I've had students play such a diverse range of instruments in really fun ways, and getting them to use that in a setting where, they started the year saying, like, oh, I play a Chinese instrument. And I think no one had ever asked them before any follow-up questions. And when I asked which instrument, and then could name, 3 of my friends that also play that instrument, and show them some videos of professional performers, it is so exciting to be able to have that mix of cultures in the classroom. So I've really enjoyed that. And then getting to have experiences outside of school. When I was teaching in Germany, I played in a gamelan. So I got to use my gamelan skills in Germany, that was run by a Hungarian, and it had a bunch of Indonesian people in it and a bunch of German people. And I could kind of understand everybody's viewpoints when we were having these conversations about, but last time we played this section 5 times, and this time you played it 6 times. And the director's saying, well, yes, because I cued you at 6 times today. And they're like, but how many times? The Germans want to know exactly how it will be. And the Indonesians are like, oh, it's all cool. So being able to kind of switch lenses and understand a lot of different viewpoints has been really fun. It's really exciting. It's a nice way to be able to connect with people wherever I am in the world. So I'm really appreciative for those experiences that I had at UH, being able to learn so much about Asian and Pacific cultures and languages and music and performance arts.
Awesome. So can I ask all of you, like, what do you do on your downtime? Do you have hobbies or something favorite that you pursue that is unique to that place, or it carries over from another place and you're able to still continue it where you are? Michael?
That's a challenging one. I'm trying to think of downtime times, but yeah, I think I mean, it's yeah, I think it's a it's a different lifestyle altogether, and that's also something actually maybe to consider and to be open to. So I think, yeah, of course, given the nature of teaching and also the different activities that we do, research and organizing events, concerts, festivals, and other things, we're sort of constantly on the go, so to speak. So, but I think it's, I mean, if I read Greg correctly, if you really like what you're doing and you enjoy it, then you just sort of keep going and then just keep making sure that it's a fun thing to do. So, uh, yeah, that's what I know some people would say. That's what a workaholic would say. But but I think no, on the downtime, so-called downtime, yeah, I try to make sure. I think having lived in Hawaii, you are close to nature and you do hikes and go to the beach and all of these things that recharge you. So whenever possible, we try to take a little escape with my family and then go and spend some time in nature or get some vitamin C, so to speak. SEA, yes. So those would be my activities, yeah. And of course, eat. That's a big one. Yeah. So in a way, we're always taking breaks over here. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Southeast Asia is like the place to be for food. So, Craig, what about you?
I had just jotted down some notes, and at the top of the list was food. Uh, so I can say we live in central Bali, near Ubud. It's a great uh, town for food, as is Denpasar, the city. Love Southeast Asian food, Balinese food. My wife's from Japan. In Ubud, we can get any of the food, and you can get the local nasi bungkus, which costs 25 cents and is amazingly delicious, or food from any kind of food from around the world. The fruit is great. So yeah, maybe enough about food. I could carry on about food for a while, but I also in Hawaii started surfing when I came to Hawaii, and my wife and I both do that, and we really love the ocean. So that's our happy place. We're at an age now where we mostly stand up paddle surf, so we catch waves, but while standing. And I'm learning for the windy days a wind foiling type of surfing as well. My wife would laugh if I would say this. I would say gardening, but she's doing most of the gardening at this time. She's not working currently. She focuses on gamelan and our garden. So, but I like to watch it grow, and she does most of the dirty work. Gamelan is a big one. I'm playing less of that than I'd like to, but I'm probably a couple years from retirement. In Indonesia, they make us teachers stop at 60, and I'll probably stay involved with adult education and teacher training and some of those things, but I'm hoping for more gardening and gamelan time in a couple of years. We do spend a lot of time at Balinese temples for ceremonies. We're very interested in the culture here, and my wife's gamelan music opens those doors. So yeah, I think that's just about it. I read a fair amount, and I try to stay busy with my hands. Two other things I teach at school are woodworking and metalsmithing, and I can find that that's therapeutic for me, as well as try to walk in the rice field every evening, which is a nice way to end the day, clear my mind a bit.
Oh,
I think that's about it.
sounds cool. Thanks. Dawn, what about you? I know you have a special skill. I've seen it on Facebook.
Yeah. I love doing photography and traveling around and meeting people. And when I went to Paraguay, in South America, I learned about the harp music there. And oh, the harp is the national instrument. As a pianist, I figured I would learn to play the harp. And then I got there, and I think the most important thing about teaching internationally is being open to experiences and being curious about where you are. So it ended up that my Spanish language teacher was from a town that does a specific art form. They do a needlework lace. And so this became really fascinating to me. And years later, I still am working on it. I've taken a lot of the traditional techniques and kind of made them my own. So now I'm fusing it with the architecture of Bucharest because I loved all of the Art Deco architecture there. So everywhere I've traveled, I find really interesting things. I meet fascinating people through the arts. And it's been really fun to, again, find those connections just by being open to starting a conversation and saying, oh, I'm a music teacher, or I lived here, or oh, I know this song. We went on a tour in a city in Romania. And while we were walking around a city on the Danube River, close to the Danube Delta in Romania, the tour guide started telling us about an area of town and the red light district. And she started singing a song about a famous Romanian prostitute. And all of a sudden I started humming along with her. And I was like, wait, why do I know this Romanian song? And it was because the song about Doña Elvira was to the tune of Cielito Lindo. And I was like, how strange is this? So again, finding those connections, those surprise connections by talking with people, by showing interest, by showing curiosity. It has been so rewarding that, I've met so many fascinating people and had all of these great experiences just by being curious and being interested in the places that you live.
It's wonderful. Yeah, I follow Don's needlework on Facebook. So it's been quite enjoyable. So I know that we have people who've been listening in online, and we have some questions in the Q&A. So maybe we should shift to looking at some of those questions. So the first one is, overall, how does international education work among and within Southeast Asian nation? How does it work among and within Southeast Asian nations? Michael, you want to start on that one?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm not, not quite sure about what specifically the question is trying to address, but I guess generally speaking, there is right now a lot of mobility in the region. You have, for example, there's a lot of teachers from in Philippines who are teaching in international schools in Indonesia. You also have we where the university I'm at actually has an international school that they've opened two programs, a Canadian program and a Cambridge program, and they take also teachers from different parts of the world. So you have mobility of teachers and lecturers coming to the region, but also I think thinking of different countries, I think particularly for Malaysia, there's a lot of students that come from neighboring countries to either to study here and then basically relocate here for a while and live here. And this happens a little bit, not so much within Southeast Asia, but a lot of people are coming from East Asia to Southeast Asia to study in international schools. So a lot of students from Japan and Korea, and basically mothers relocate the children to the region. They study here, and then the father comes once in a while to visit them. Interesting. But at the university level, yes, we do have a lot of students in Malaysia from Indonesia, We have students from Myanmar. We have, I think those two countries mainly. We have some from Thailand and some from the Philippines, but because, well, the Philippines now has a free higher education in some public universities, so a lot of people stay there. And yeah, also a lot of Thai people choose to stay in Thailand for their education. So it kind of depends on each country, but I would say, yeah, a large number of Indonesian students right now coming to Malaysia to do their studies. Yeah.
Um, I guess one of my questions would be like my experience in teaching in international schools is there is a hierarchy of employees in the school system, and I found that having a degree from like U.S. or U.K. or Australia often gave you a good teaching position. Is that still holds true?
Depends on the school, but yeah, in some cases, yes, because if you're coming from the US or from Canada, then you're bringing along those experiences, and usually the international schools will favor that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand the second question. Is
Mm.
what do we mean by international education in order for us as ASEAN parents? So I guess that would be somewhat the mobility between Southeast Asian countries for education, which I think Michael addressed. So I hope we got that right. Okay. Then the next question that we have is we heard a lot about international education. However, we're still a bit confused about it, like IB and UWC, etc. How does it look in real life of an international educator? So maybe Dawn, you want to talk about the different curriculums you've worked with?
Sure. So again, part of researching the schools is looking at what curriculums they offer. Some offer like an American, including an AP and advanced placement curriculum. Some offer British curriculum, so they're doing like the IGCSE, GCSE, and A levels for the high school courses. And then the International Baccalaureate has become, I think, more popular as the years go by. Especially the diploma level course. So the final 2 years of a student's education. And this is one thing, if we're talking about moving around between schools for families that move or for teachers that move, the International Baccalaureate is something that allows for a bit of kind of a standardized approach to the curriculum. So if you go from an IB school to an IB school, the students should and teachers should be able to make that change fairly easily. So that has become quite prevalent. The UWC, I think, is just a kind of school, the world colleges. Some of them do offer the IB curriculum, and they have different campuses all over the world. I'm assuming that's what you were asking about. Some international schools have living on campus. The UWC usually is a boarding school for both students and teachers, where a lot of the other international schools are not boarding schools, they're just day schools.
Mhm, mhm. Greg, what about in Bali? What kind of format or curriculum is offered at Green School?
Green School is fully independent. This was the first Green School. There are now 4. There's one in South Africa, one in New Zealand, and one in Mexico. But we don't follow any specified or standard curriculum. So I like that as a teacher. I'm free to create the curriculum as I go, and of course it's checked on the way and approved. But also in Bali nearby, I have friends that teach at an IB school, and another friend of mine is the head of a Cambridge school. So there's certainly a large variety. But yeah, Green School specifically is independent. And um, I mentioned I was at the Waldorf school. Sometimes they're called Steiner schools internationally. That's where I taught in Honolulu. But one is being developed in Ubud right now, so I'm involved with that on the side a bit as well. And but the Waldorf schools also are not tied in with IB or Cambridge. I was going to mention one other thing that might relate to the first question, just regarding national laws of a place. I guess the school is always beholden to the national laws of the country where it's at. But sometimes our Indonesian and Balinese students have to meet certain requirements that our international students don't necessarily have to. So that's good to be aware of too. So we have a separate side program where our local students do a little extra, and we're aware how we carry that so we don't overburden them. They can get credits for that. But religious studies, for example, is something they need to do in Indonesia. So I would imagine that's different depending on the country where you end up.
Yeah, that was true for us when I was teaching in Abu Dhabi. Any of the students who were from the Middle East area whose families were Muslim, they had religious studies they had to attend to also. Yeah. The next question, someone has written anonymously, from hearing everyone's story, it's really amazing to hear and to know that your network is your net worth. What's an advice you would give to someone that's not confident with their public speaking networking? Who wants to take that first? Greg, go
I'd
ahead.
be happy to go. People often don't believe me, but I tell my students when I was their age, I was incredibly shy. Public speaking terrified me, and I would be the last student to speak up, in a classroom discussion. And now I'm teaching social studies, where it's all about the dialogue. So I frequently get students who tell me of their fear, and I would say honor the fear, be aware of it, but just by practicing, by dialogue, we can all learn and grow. So I just don't think you have to stay in that fixed place. Keep networking, keep getting to know people. I'm fascinated by biographies. It's nice to hear from Mayco and Don, but Don mentioned at one point, just keep asking questions, and this connects to that. And I find destiny is, as you get older, it's amazing to watch how life weaves its way. So, take those opportunities and put yourself out there. Yeah, force yourself to engage with people. That's what I would say.
Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a legit question in a way. I think well, first of all, I would recommend for that person to use whatever means they feel more comfortable with. So if, let's say, you're not too comfortable speaking, or you're more of an introvert or whatnot, you can always use email or other forms of communication to introduce yourself and just to share what it is you do and what you're interested in. And but I think like Greg mentioned, it's important to share these things when you're meeting people in specific spaces and specific venues or events. So networking is important. I'd say when you're starting, it might be good to just go and introduce yourself and then share, for example, what it is you're working on, be it as a student or in your first job. And then if you want advice, then you can actually ask for that. I mean, I think in general, I a lot of people that have let's say more experience than me always feel more than comfortable sharing about their own past experiences and their own struggles and successes. So I think being all you have to do is be a good listener. So yeah, don't feel afraid to actually ask for advice and recommendations, because everyone that is in a specific position was once also a student and was also once going through their first job. Yeah.
Mm, true. Dawn, do you have anything to add to that too?
A whole lot. I think just the idea of networking, when we say it, maybe sounds a bit intimidating, but really it's just talking to people. It's spending time with people. So maybe if you don't feel very comfortable talking to them, what are your interests, and find, ways to be around other people and engage with them. And eventually it will become easier to talk with them. You can be doing practice interviews with peers, with your professors at UH. You have already, by being at UH, you have an amazing network available to you. So I think you're all off to a great start, hopefully.
Thanks. The last question we have is from Shannon Peterson. How did you grow let me start again. How did you grow a social life when first moving to a new country, especially if you didn't have a strong command of the language? How did you avoid feeling isolated? Who wants to jump on that one first?
Yeah, I don't think I've experienced that too much, because I usually have friends and a network of people. So I think, of course, leverage on your friends and connections. Yeah, those are really good starting point. But nowadays, I mean, back in the days, it was a real struggle. I mean, you really had to, let's say, make friend with the lady selling the vegetables, or the guy at the coffee shop, and start to develop connections that way. Nowadays, through Facebook and Instagram and other platforms, actually you can find online communities, be it let's say expat communities in a specific country, or the I don't know, heavy metal lovers of Malaysia, whatever. There's so many online communities that I think you can just participate in them, and then see if you can connect with people in those platforms. And yeah, take it from there.
Dawn or Greg, do you have anything to add to that too?
I would say, yeah, when you're in the world of international education, there's a lot of people around you who are in the world of international education. So, like, anytime I started a new job, the 20 other teachers I started with, or the 5 other teachers I started with, were my immediate friends. They were my family away from family. They were my support system. And the schools really do a good job of helping you out with the logistics of things, but you empathize with the people that you arrive with in the country, with your cohort. And to be honest, I'm finding it so much harder now coming back to the US and trying to settle here, because there isn't that connection, that instant connection with coworkers, because they all have their lives outside. Where when you go to an international school, those are the people you see during the day, those are the people you go out with at night. And eventually, as Mayco said, you start doing more interest groups and looking at, do you want to be, like I was playing in the gamelan, I was going to art shows all the time, I was going to theater festivals, and you find out more in the local culture eventually. But there's that nice kind of security blanket when you just arrive, of having people to hang out with and do things with as you're adjusting to the new place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I found this also when I went and taught in Abu Dhabi last. I knew that the Indonesian embassy always has a gamelan. So one of the students at the school, her mother was active from Indonesia, and she played in the gamelan. So I said, Ata, get me into the gamelan. So we would go up there twice a week and play. I mean, this is in the middle of Abu Dhabi. They had a gamelan, which is really cool. But yeah, those are lifelines that if you know what to kind of look for, there's always something there, because the international communities take their culture and their traditions with them wherever they go. There is another question. Haruka asks, how is it to raise your kids in a country that you're not from. If you're constantly moving within a country or internationally, what kinds of impacts does it have on your kids and your family? Michael, you want to take that one?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, my son was actually born in Thailand for the sake of getting all the paperwork done there, and then moved to Malaysia when he was a month and a half, I think, so fairly young. Yeah, so I think one of the I joke one of the first things to consider is which is interesting is the identity. I think for quite some time, I mean, uh, when when people ask him where he's from, of course he would say Malaysia, because that's all he knew. So, and then you start, to develop identity based on your parents and grandparents and religions and whatnot. So yeah, that's fun and interesting to observe. But of course, you have to deal with a number of other logistics. I think when they're fairly young, one to figure out is vaccines, because you have to follow a specific schedule of different vaccines to take, and different places will have also different requirements. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Of course, if you're going to be working and they're young, you're going to need assistance, either a nursery or a babysitter or someone that stays at home with them. So all of those are concerns and things to figure out. But yeah, like I said, also in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of different options and different possibilities that you can explore. So you just have to be open to, I guess, different ways of doing things. And yeah, but I think after your kid is, let's say, 4 years old, and you've kind of, they're more settled, a little bit more independent, at least they can, uh, you know, get their own food, go to the toilet by themselves, that kind of thing. I'd say it's actually a good time to explore possibilities and explore new horizons, because by the time they become a teenager, actually they are forming their own strong connections and friendships and activities in specific places. So actually, it gets maybe increasingly more challenging to relocate to a new place. So yeah, when they're young, definitely go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they're below 2 years old, you can also take advantage of that awesome bassinet that they offer on airplanes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a wonderful experience. Yeah, first of all, you get to sit on the front row, which is already pretty good. But second of all, yeah, you can just place them there and enjoy your movies and your meals. So it's kind of like a date, which is also fairly unique at that point in your lives. But yeah.
I personally, my parents were teaching at an international school in the Himalayan mountains in North India. So from age 5 to 18, I grew up in India. So I don't think that having grown up in another country and speaking another language that's not my ethnic connection was a detriment or a bad thing. I think it opened up the door to seeing the world in a really different way. And like Greg said, getting the travel bug, I got it early. So I think it's a good thing. And having taught in international schools too, I guess Dawn and Greg, you'll hopefully chime in the same way, is that the kids respond positively, especially if you have educators who are making sense of what they see in the country where they're in. Like when I taught in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, we always looked at what are the different holidays that are being observed around them. So right now it's, Mooncake Festival, right? So we did a lot of activities and had, uh, music for gamelan as well as angklung and different other activities that made sense of the celebrations the kids would see around. And we got the parents would come and say, thank you for teaching our kids about these traditions, because it's enriched what we see and discuss as when we go out as a family. So I'm all for international education and growing up in other places. I just feel like I've benefited immensely. So what do you all feel? Is that also the same thing for you?
Terry, I might add, I think a nice example of what you just described. Tomorrow is International Peace Day, and we celebrate that. So there's an international festival. But next week we have Galungan in Bali, which is every in the Balinese calendar every 280 days. That's the big one. That's 10 days, and we certainly talk about that too. I just think as teachers and families coming from abroad, something to be aware of is first, do your best to learn the language. I'm so grateful to UH that has opened doors, but this even goes back to the previous question about socially. I think it can happen that some families or students come and they sort of remain in an international bubble, maybe with fellow people from their countries or with just a pod of international people, and that's kind of how they move about. And I think they miss an opportunity if they do that, because with the language, just to really connect socially to the local culture is an opportunity. And it's not that one shouldn't hang out with their international friends, but to find that balance. And that socially, even the beauty of Southeast Asia is going to the market is a social opportunity. You know, people love to chat and to mix it up, and to it's warm. So Gamelan's been mentioned a lot. You know, join a group that opened a lot of doors for us socially. But yeah, I love at my school this mix of local and international, and I think to find ways for that to weave is really it's a great opportunity.
I would say that getting out of that international bubble is really important. So yeah, I always made sure that I didn't live surrounded by expats, because then my experience was totally different, and I got to see things that most expats wouldn't get to see because they stayed in a bubble. There is one more question that came in. How did being overseas impact your values, either personally or in regards to your beliefs? Dawn, you're smiling. You want to take that one first?
I am so grateful to all of the experiences that I've had, because, you know, coming from Minnesota, I had a perspective on the world. Even going to UH, like the things I was learning in my anthropology and Pacific history classes at University of Hawaii, I was like, why have I never heard of these things? Because that wasn't the perspective where I came from. And with each new place that I lived, being able to talk to local people, to hear their historical perspectives, their cultural perspectives on the world, is so important in this day and age where we see all of these countries popping up in the news cycle, and being able to have a personal connection, being able to have some kind of other perspective than just what you read on the front page of the newspaper is so important. So I am, you know, I think going back to this, what about the third culture kid or moving around? I think it is really a benefit. I think it gives students and teachers and parents such a great perspective on the world if you're open to it. And yeah, if you listen to what people are saying to you.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. As a third culture adult.
Exactly.
Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of values and different practices that you learn, both let's say from a religious standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint. There are also different cultural practices of different religions, which is also interesting to learn about. Yeah, and of course, I think being understanding and respectful is sort of the foundation to anything. So when you are interacting with different communities, then I think you become or you develop maybe a certain sensibility for the way things are done, and maybe what you should do or what you shouldn't do. So yeah, have in Indonesia, of course, uh, uh, the majority of the community I was spending time with were Muslims. So we celebrated Ramadan and went through fasting and all these things. So it was quite unique, I think, also, and also joyful to spend, of course, celebrations, and I don't mind celebrating any holiday really. And in Thailand as well, it's learning about Buddhism and that way of life, and I guess different approaches and understandings of how people practice it. It's also interesting to watch. And in Malaysia itself, I mean, you have already uh, uh, um, a large Muslim community with the Malays. You have Hindus, Catholics, Christians. So there's quite a prominent diversity here. So of course, there are certain things that you share with certain circles, but then maybe in other circles you would refrain from eating certain kind of foods or drinking certain kind of drinks for the sake of respecting who's in that particular space at that moment in time. So those kind of things, I think, are valuable lessons, and then you can take them anywhere you go. Yeah.
Greg, with the upcoming festival for 10 days in Bali, what will you be working with the kids on or doing? How will you be engaging?
Excuse me. Well, with the arts, they build a large bamboo structure called a penjor, and that's something I do in a social studies class. And also with gamelan music, one of my favorite things during the 10 days of Galungan is there are wandering groups of children who play gamelan, and they have a dancing barong. So yeah, the arts are just unlimited here in Bali. It's so much a way of life. So yeah, the music, we'll be doing some gamelan. We play gamelan with the students. So, and we'll have a school celebration tomorrow. We have a Friday assembly where we celebrate Peace Day as well as Galungan.
Do you have any last comments or advice for any of our participants? Dawn, can you think of anything to add?
I would just encourage you to find jobs and see the world. It's a great way to get out and experience in a different way than just traveling or being a tourist. You get to really have a chance to be somewhere and immerse yourself in the culture a lot more. So that was really what I enjoyed from it. And I would say if you have follow-up questions, of course, you can reach out to any of us and we'd be happy to answer after this.
Yeah, if you send your questions to CSES, we will forward them on your behalf for sure. Well, I'd like to thank our panelists because we're down to 5 minutes before the time is supposed to end. So thank you, Greg and Dawn and Mayco, for sharing your experiences with us today. I also want to thank the Center for Southeast Asian Studies team who's been managing everything behind the scenes. We have Ima, Pin, and Savun who are on our CSES team who've helped with technology support of the webinar. And before you leave, please help us by improving our webinars by taking the surveys, and the links are all in the chat. We really appreciate your input, and honestly, we really read all of it and do discuss it as a team on what we can implement and do to make it better. So your input is really valuable. Thank you all again, panelists, for spending the time with us. We really appreciate it. And I wish you well for your evening as your day progresses in Southeast Asia, and dawn as your night falls. So Thank you. Be safe.
You too. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Aloha,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Mhm.